I think. Thank you. I can try to share my screen. I took down the decisions or what I heard from the commission, and I'm sorry, it's chicken scratch because I did this in 4 minutes, but here we go. Okay. So here are the 4 agreements that we are potentially making. I'm going to call them 1, 2, 3, 4. So in the first one, accept written public comment on an ongoing basis using web form or email. Request a mailbox from the city. That postal mail can be accepted. Post these public comments to the PAC website as part of the meeting records for that meeting. What I heard as a recommendation, which we would still kind of logistically need to figure out, is that folks would also be able to submit, like it doesn't need to be submitted in English. We would work through translations that came in native language. So that's what Samira and I were talking through, is just like logistically, how do we do that? But this can be our recommendation and we figure out the logistics later. So that's number 1. Number 2, we didn't really talk about this. So this has no changes than as it was written, but distribute written public comment received prior to 4 p.m. 2 business days prior to the meeting, that all members of the commission or subcommittee will review prior to the meeting. Comments received later will be included in the following meeting. Number 3, so this is where there are some changes. When public comment is accepted verbally at a meeting, meeting facilitators and co-chairs will allow public comment with no time limit, and asking co-chairs to manage that time. And still that the total amount of time for public comment would be defined in the meeting agenda, and asking commenters to keep their remarks focused on the subject matter. And then the final is verbal public comment will always be taken by the commission before major decisions, such as code package or accompanying report approval. Other commission and subcommittee meetings will take verbal comment when time is allotted for it on the agenda. So that piece is something we should decide on, is, are we going to say public comment is on every agenda, or are we going to leave that up to the co-chairs of that meeting? So 1, accept written. 2, received prior, 2 business day prior. 3, no time limit or flexible time, managed by facilitators and co-chairs. 4, always at big decisions, we need to decide if it's always or always and then decided by a co-chairs for the agenda.
Thoughts?
Just to clarify one thing really quickly, we would need to get budgetary approval, and that's something that's easy to ask for, to hire a translator for it. So there may be a administrative delay there on written public comment in other languages. It's important to do it. This is not a reason not to do it, just mentioning that it may take a little longer to get that administrative approval and then hire someone to do the translation. Just wanted to get that out there so folks knew what the implementation process would be.
Connie.
And not to continue to bring this up, but do we want to add a clause about response? Because I think that might be a question that is asked, as we are like being very detailed about how to give us comment. We don't say anything about how we will respond to the comment if it requires response.
Faith?
What I heard and didn't include was Dan's suggestion around that, of just like at the bare minimum, at least acknowledging the speaker and thanking them for their comment. Connie, or do others have recommendations? I don't know that we made a recommendation. Are we going to allot time to respond to public comment?
Monica.
I know how my brain works, and sometimes it takes me a little while to come up with a response. So I would say that, you know, an appreciation and a thank you for the comment, and so, you know, some time to synthesize what that comment really means. I'm not, my brain is not built to respond immediately sometimes.
Thank you. Connie.
So I think this like kind of brings up another question, which is like, who would respond? And is the ability for comment to ignite response? So then there is then a dialogue. And if so, then like, yeah, who is responsible for responding? Because there's 20 commissioners, we can't all respond. The burden of response should not be placed solely on one person. So, and anytime I have spoken in a public, you know, on a commission or like, you know, budget request or anything like that, it's just been to speak and like, you know, without response. So maybe we just simply say like, you know, we'll be acknowledging people, but unless maybe if you require a response, it's a written request or something like that. But like, I don't even know who would respond, I guess is what I would say, and whose responsibility, where that would fall, because I think we could all agree, 20 of us, we would all probably have a different response.
And remember when I asked at the beginning, what is the purpose of public comment? People said to listen to the community. Charlie.
So if we were going to do a response, and that would be more of a Q&A. And so I'm hearing that this is just listening to their response, their comment, acknowledging it, maybe even saying, you know, this will be something we will take into account or something as we make these plans or make this commission work. But yeah. I mean, we could be here for hours if we were to take in these questions and try to answer them. I mean, these comments, and then try to have a response. And I think that's important, though, that they know that something's going to be done with that response.
Thank you, Charlie. Dan?
Well, I want to go back to what Commissioner Renaud was saying about trusting the chairs to some extent. What's happened at the Citizen Review Committee is that, for those who don't know, that's the existing Police Review Board, and I shouldn't use that term. Anyway, so often there are police there and there are community members there, and sometimes they try to get into back and forth with each other. And what they do is they say, please direct all your comments at the chair, and not even to individual members of the committee. And I think there's something to be said for that. And then if there's a question that based in something that the commission's already decided or our operating rules or something like that, I think it's not a problem to respond to that on the spot if we have an answer to it. But otherwise, you can just say thank you, and either we'll get back to you later, or we've taken your comment down. And I think it's important to have some flexibility in this question about responding or not, depending on the circumstances. I guess that's, I'm going to say for the exercise during the break, what I wrote down, what I'd like to see tonight is that we set aside 10 minutes at the end, see how many people want to chat, and then divide the time up, but nobody gets more than like 2 minutes. I don't know where the 90 seconds came from, but nobody gets more than 2 minutes, no matter how, if only one person wants to use that, we don't have to go the whole 10 minutes. That's just a suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Victoria and then Faith.
Yes, I like what Charlie said. I think that when people make a comment, a public comment, it's very important for them to understand what are you gonna do with those comments or how you're gonna work with those comments. Sometimes not as much as respond the comment, but knowing that you're listening and how you're gonna use their opinions how these opinions are going to matter in the process more than anything. Being very clear and transparent about how you're going to use this is it will be very important for people making comments. Sometimes more than giving an answer.
Yeah, thank you, Victoria. All right, Faith, I think you have some input here. And what is your next step?
So my suggestion, Monica, if this works for you, is that you and I work together on putting this in writing and send back to the subcommittee to be presented at the next commission meeting for a vote to be accepted next Thursday. And Dan, I hear your request to carve out 10 minutes on today's agenda to give it a go. And
we have a full packed agenda. We have more things to talk about, but yes.
Can I make a request for like a 6-minute public comment period at the end that we will commit to, and we'll give it a go. And I hear you, Christine, and we'll move fast.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much. I do want to give our audience the chance, again, the Q&A is available for questions. And so we will try, as your facilitator, I will try and be able to bring your questions to the commissioners here. And I just want to, again, request questions in the Q&A. Okay, so thank you for that robust, wonderful conversation. I feel like we've gotten to a really good place around public comment. So now what we need to do is to look at the commission, the Charter Commission's community engagement framework. Victoria, let's see, where would this be in the slide deck? Yes. So in what the Charter Commission has done, they've looked at the purpose, they've given a 1-sentence, a brief statement on the purpose of the community engagement framework. Then they've talked about their vision, 1 sentence explaining the powers and the goals of the commission, 1 sentence stating the ways the community engagement can positively impact the commission achieving its goals, and a list of the positive impacts of community engagement and non-specific to the commission. So it is a very good list. Then they list out the values and the principles, and then the objectives, which are the success criteria of the public engagement. So how would you know that engagement is going well? And then what does not exist currently is methodologies. And that is the how of how would you want to do engagement. And that could be listening sessions, and it can be a lot of different things. And I'm sure, you know, we will get to those particulars. But for tonight, we want to talk about purpose, vision, values, and objectives. So those are the goals for this evening. So again, we're looking at being brief and being facilitated, letting me facilitate, and being constructive. And so is it possible, Victoria, for you to share or for everyone to look at the Charter Commission's draft? Do we have that?
Yes, I do have that. Let me exit this. And okay, charter, yes. Okay, let me share. Share my screen.
Thank you. And if you can make that
Yes, bigger.
a gazillion% bigger. Thank you so very much. And again, okay, so here is a beautiful question. Purpose. What is the purpose of this type of framework that this group would want to use it for, right? So we're looking at the purpose. It says the following document is a framework that describes the Charter Commission's vision and approach to community engagement. Commissioners will use this framework and their adopted values to co-create engagement strategies for charter review. In the bylaws committee that met earlier this week, they accepted some of the words, they changed some of the words, and they took wholesale parts of this as a draft for their own. And so I'm just letting this committee know that you can do that. If this sentence resonates with you under purpose, then you can accept it, change the word, you know, to police, to PAC.
Police Accountability Commission.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I just like totally spit that out. I apologize. You can just change those words and say, yes, we accept it as the purpose. So thoughts around the purpose.
Yeah, I honestly, I was looking at this document earlier, and just removing Charter Commission and putting Police Accountability Commission in there was working out for me.
It was working for you? Okay. And I see a thumbs up from Faith. How about everybody else? Yeah. Jason, Connie. Good. May says thumbs up. Dan, beautiful. Thank you so very much. All right. Charlie, yes.
I was just wondering, as I read this earlier too, I mean, I guess community engagement covers it, but I was just wondering about it reflecting better inclusivity somehow. I'm not sure how that would be worded. It just feels better, I guess. Because community engagement, I mean, that's fine, but it feels like it needs to be more clear.
And there's a difference between community engagement and public information, right? Where there's a one-way communication versus two-way communication. Is that what you're driving at, Charlie?
I don't think so. No.
Okay, so what do you want to expound a little bit more?
Well, I'm trying to think about what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
I guess this is the best way to say it because I can't think of anything at the moment. I too need time to think more, but I guess this will work for now.
Charlie, is it like community engagement is there a way we can write that in more plain language? Is that what you're...
Not necessarily, although that is something I did want to bring up for not only our, community engagement, but for those of us on the commission who sometimes, has never been involved in this before, this kind of work before, and isn't highly educated. And I feel like I'm one of the community people sitting in this commission. And I want to make sure I understand what's being said as much as I want them to understand what's being said. Just to keep that in mind. And I am wondering if there is another way to say community engagement that makes sure it reflects that we value everybody's input. But I'll go with community engagement.
Okay. And we're going to have another meeting on this, and we may want to wordsmith a bit, but I'm going to ask Monica and then Connie.
Charlie, I wonder if to expand on what a community means to us, because I think I know what you're getting at, right? Because when people say community, it doesn't necessarily mean me. It doesn't necessarily mean, you or Victoria. It means, what the rest of the world is, I guess. But the vision could be our community. What we mean by community is all the peoples that have not been in this conversation before, right?
Beautiful. Thank you, Monica. Connie?
I was a little reticent to approve this because I do think that it's a little ambiguous. Potentially, Charlie, what if we added language that said to community engagement through notes, public, like if we spell it out a little bit, does that feel like it opens up the definition by defining it and being a bit more broad and explaining what that engagement looks like?
Yes, like, so whoever reads this will know it means them as well.
So I think you're talking about the who, Charlie. And Connie, I think you're talking about the how. And the how would be down in methodologies.
Okay. I think I'm talking about both.
Both?
In general, the statement is maybe a little ambiguous, and that it could be more approachable if we broadened, like, by spelling it out a little more. I know that sounds counterintuitive a little bit, but like, yeah, I understand what Charlie's saying. And so I think I was a little like, maybe I want to vote for this, but it feels like these statements are very vague.
Okay. Thank you, Connie. Dan?
I'm going to propose that we add after the words community engagement, which values all voices. Charlie's nodding her head, and I'm hoping other people agree with that, because I think that gets at what we're trying to say and makes it clear that we're not saying we're going to approach it somehow, and we'll talk about that later. Okay, thank you. I hope that's okay with everybody.
Thank you. Charlie, I see a thumbs up. Feeling good about that. Okay, very good.
Thumbs up.
Okay, thank you. And I do want to clarify that we're not voting today or making decisions, but we are going to go through wordsmithing, and because at the end of this meeting, before the public comment, we're going to break into subgroups and ask people to get together over the next week to actually do some catching of what we were talking about today. Okay. So vision. the vision is our next step in this process. And what's nice is there's a list underneath that talks about, in addition, we expect that our community education and engagement will amplify all of Portland's voices in city government and grow our democracy. Promote transparency and public trust in local government. So these are big, big things. A vision is a big thing. Increase public awareness and understanding of how our city works. Maintain and build new relationships between the city and the community that last through time. Create new equitable pathways for Portlanders to engage in public process, and increase city government responsiveness and responsibility to account for its actions. So these are big vision statements. And this is what I would like us to think about and to discuss is like, what is your vision for this committee? And Faith said, yes, she's taking notes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I'm sorry, Dan, is your hand up?
Yeah, it is. You know, there seems to be a lot of reliance on the Charter Commission, which isn't doing the same thing that we're doing. And some of this language is about stuff that's bigger than the Police Oversight Commission that we're trying to design. So, I mean, I think basically we want to engage people about their experiences with police and with trying to resolve complaints about the police, so that we can design a commission that's responsive to needs that, you know, and some of these points are relevant in the sense that it should be transparent and trustworthy, and that people's voices should be heard as part of the system. But I think this is way too specific to what the Charter Commission does.
It's just a launching point. Thank you, Monica.
I agree, Dan. But there is it's a great outline and on something that we can build on. For example, in the first point, amplify all of Portland's voices in city government and grow democracy, could be receive input and active participation of all Portland's voices in the city, especially those communities impacted by over-policing and other concerned citizens. For example, you know, you can that same concept can be applied to our goal. Does that make sense?
That's beautiful, Monica. Yes. Yes, Faith.
I'm sorry I wasn't taking notes earlier, because when you asked us, like, what is our goal of public comment, I heard many of the things to me that would fit under here of community engagement for us is really listening and understanding perspectives that we may not know or otherwise would have the opportunity to be heard. And I feel like even that is really broad. Like, I would like to be more specific of, you know, specific communities that are targeted by the police or have long-standing history of over-policing in their communities. Those are the folks that we're wanting to hear from. And the community engagement process is, the framework is to create a plan of, or guiding document of how we will do those things.
Any other thoughts around that? So again, I'll be asking for people to volunteer to write the vision, write the values and the guiding principles. To capture, you're not making decisions. To capture what we're talking about and bringing these back for us to consider. So very, very important point there for me. So values and guiding principles really are the things that we are holding ourselves accountable to, that we are accountable to being an anti-racist organization, that equity and transparency and communication and collaboration are all really important. And again, here, values and guiding principles are the things that we will be held to, and then the objectives are the things that we want to accomplish, achieve. Any questions around these differences?
I'm struggling a little bit between vision and values. Could we just spend a second, like,
yes,
differentiating the two?
Staff?
Yeah, sorry about that. Just a moment. We did have a question on that, and I actually did ask the Charter Review Commission a little bit about it when receiving this document. And the distinction is essentially that the vision section is it's three components. It's a sentence explaining what the commission's for. It's a sentence stating the ways community engagement can positively impact the commission achieving its goals. And then it's essentially a list of positive impacts that community engagement can do non-specific to the, in this case, Charter Review Commission. The values and principles section, on the other hand, is both a reaffirmation of the city's core values. So the city has 6 core values, which are in that first point in that unnumbered list. And those are the list beginning with anti-racism. Victoria, if you could scroll down just that first bullet, point that begins with adhere to, it's back up a little bit. And then the rest of the items on there are essentially applying the Charter Commission's values and principles, which the Police Accountability Commission will be discussing next week. Its principles and values at the full commission meeting, applying that to the community engagement concept. So it's a little hard to distinguish, but it's essentially more specific to the commission's work and values and guiding principles, and applying the overall commission ones to community engagement, whereas our vision is more non-specific.
Thank you. Then objectives are again how we know that we are actually accomplishing the things that we want to accomplish, and then we're suggesting to add methodologies at the bottom, the tactics, the way of going about doing engagement for this large committee. So what I would love to be able to do is to take people's names and let me know what area you would like to work in. And you have about 9 days to be able to come back to this group with suggestions. and what we've talked about and what we've captured here today? Connie.
I'd like to raise my hand for values and guiding principles.
Okay, great. May. Yes, I did say 9 days.
Can I contribute to a little bit of each?
Yes. Charlie.
I too would like to do the values and guiding principles.
Okay. Monica.
I'll take vision.
Beautiful. Dan?
Well, I am completely lost as to who's signed up for what, so I'll plug in wherever there's a need.
Okay. Jason?
I'm going to pass this time. Thank you.
Okay. Faith?
I'm interested in methodologies and guiding principles.
Okay. Anybody for objectives? Dan?
What I mean by I'll plug in where it's needed. I just want to get back to my question in the chat. You said we have 9 days, but I thought we were presenting this to the full commission next week. Isn't that what you said also? Now I'm kind of just trying to get this timeline in my head.
To clarify for Dan, if I may, I'm sorry to interrupt, Christine. The goal is to have this is part of the document that needs to be presented to the full commission, but not at the January 27th meeting. The full community engagement framework needs to be approved by the full commission prior to the end of the organizational phase, which is still a ways away. But in order to have this body be able to, the subcommittee be able to review the word choice of and you know what the drafting groups come up with at their next meeting and still have time to look that over in advance. It's going to be asked for by the end of next week, so there's time to circulate it in advance of the next meeting, which is 2 or 3 weeks away. To clarify before the question, that is different from the public comment conversation, which is going to the full commission next week. This is the full community engagement framework document, which is not going to the full commission next week. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that clarity. So I have Connie, values and principles, Dan, objectives, Faith, methodology, values and principles. May said a little bit of everything. Charlie, values and principles, and Monica, vision. All right, I captured it. Excellent. Charlie. Sorry, you're on mute.
Are we then not meeting as a group to discuss all these at some, I mean, I'm kind of confused, you know, why we're choosing each one of these individually.
Your small group, which includes Connie and Faith, and you are going to get together.
Okay.
And talk.
Then I would also like to be in objectives.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so you're going to get together with Dan.
And don't forget May. They'll be a part of
Yep.
it.
So Christine, will you send that by email so we know who's doing? Perfect. Thank you.
You betcha. You betcha. I'll be glad to. Okay, this is fantastic, everyone. We have accomplished so very much. And we have time for public comment. But I want to make sure that everybody If there's any concerns, any questions before we go into that direction? Charlie, did I see your hand up? No. Okay, then Dan?
Yes, well, we're sort of being guided to create these two documents, which is great. But my thoughts about community engagement go a little bit broader than just public input and our vision of how we want to engage the community. I think we also need to talk about what we're already doing, such as when we send out meeting notices and other things to the public, and when somebody, if anybody, speaks for our commission, and I think that's something we set aside at the bylaws subcommittee because we thought that this subcommittee was going to deal with that. So I'd like to have, we said we'd have 6 minutes for public input. I'm fully committed to that. But I'd like to have some thoughts from other people about this, the question of, so I'll specifically say that when something comes to my inbox that says signed the Police Accountability Commission, and it was not something that I was asked to have input into, it kind of rubs me the wrong way. And I want to make sure that when something's signed by the Police Accountability Commission, it's based on a vote of, whatever the majority is that we decided of, and not, so if it's from the staff, I think it should be signed blah, 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 staff person for the commission. So then it'll be much clearer that it's not coming from us. I hope I'm not out of line by bringing that up, but it was just something I've been thinking about.
Samir?
Yeah, Dan, is that something that's a hypothetical, or is that something that's happened? Is the question. Also, to clarify one thing, and maybe Jason, or as Lisa's not here, they're the co-chairs of the other subcommittee. My understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jason, was that the question of who the spokesperson is and all of that was going to be under the communications portion of the bylaws and or the communications guidelines document, not something that subcommittee had sent to this subcommittee. Yeah, Jason, if you could clarify.
I think we were going to say that we ought to have one, that one ought to be determined, but who determines that? Probably not the bylaws committee.
Okay.
This group would be good to determine that.
Okay, and then Dan, I think if that's something that has come up, I'd ask that maybe after the meeting, if you could send that over, because I think we haven't yet adopted bylaws, but there's a question that if someone's speaking on behalf of the commission, there should be some awareness of it by the rest of the group.
No, yeah, I agree with that. I'm suggesting that when somebody from the staff sends out an email that goes to the community in general, that it shouldn't be signed by the Police Accountability Commission. It should be signed by the name of the staff person, because I've seen that happen with other city commissions too, and I just want to make it clear who's writing the emails.
Thank you, Dan. Jason?
And just an example of that, we're having a problem with that at this point with the PCEP. We're not clear what the PCEP is saying versus what the PCEP staff is saying. It's they're actually having kind of an argument about it in the other room. Well, I guess it's over by now, but it'd be good to have clarification there.
Yeah, thank you. Really helpful. Yes, Faith.
So question about y'all's question in the bylaws subcommittee. So your question is, what I'm hearing is two questions. Who speaks on behalf of the commission? And how do we decide that? And your suggestion is we come up with that process in this committee. And then second, when we sign something, Police Accountability Commission, how do we determine like what says it's the Police Accountability Commission? Does it need to be like 12 out of 20 agree with whatever that email is? Or, I'm just giving a random number. And is that something you're recommending we decide here? Or is that something that's happening in the bylaws subcommittee?
Bylaws were just determining that we ought to have a spokesperson or spokespersons. And these are the people that would do the work to determine that they had a consensus to issue some document or statement. And we shouldn't try to figure out voting numbers. That's all really complicated, and we can set that aside for today. We want to have a spokesperson, and we want to distinguish the spokesperson of the commission from the staff, and have those never be confused, because those may not be have the same messages at some point. We may have different opinions, speak in a different voice.
Another process question to be determined. I don't know if we can decide it this evening.
I have a suggestion that the spokesperson is less something that we would, it's probably there's someone who has natural ability to do that, and also the time and inclination to do that. And if someone is feeling that way, they probably ought to talk to the co-chairs or to staff and sort of say that, so that we can, shorten this task of identifying who that person will be. Of course, it's a little bit like an umpire in Little League. If the group would be able to say to this person, no, it's not working out. We need a new spokesperson. So just be open to that. Might not be something that we should stick to, like, oh, he's the spokesperson for the whole year.
Right.
That might be terrible.
We'll continue this conversation. So thank you so much for that suggestion. We are now going to transition to public comment. It's going to take a couple of moments here to be able to do that. But I would like people to let me know, I guess that would be a raised hand, in order for me to call on them. I'll be calling on people.
So Christine, in practicing what we've kind of just decided, I see 3 hands raised and we have 6 minutes. So each speaker would get 2 minutes. If there is a speaker who would request longer to accommodate your communication style, just please say that at the beginning of your comment.
Very good. I'd like to call on Debbie. And 2 minutes is is the time that I'll give. Debbie, would you like to start? Yes.
Can you hear me? Take
yeah.
some extra effort when you're in the audience to get you're unmuted. So I'm Debbie Iona. I'm a member of the Police Accountability Commission. Just want to say I'm really grateful that you're headed towards allowing the public to comment during when we as a group, make decisions. And just want to, as a personal statement, that I'm a member of the League of Women Voters of Portland. And over the years, I've attended a number of advisory committee meetings in all sorts of bureaus, and have found that it's, that sometimes when they allow public comment before decisions are made, the outcome changes, because quite often people in the audience who show up at meetings over and over and over again are knowledgeable about the subject and have valuable things to contribute. So I'm glad you're doing that. I also think it's good to have some time at the end just for people who want to make general comments about the meeting or the subject matter. And then just finally, I want to say, I noticed we've been relying a lot on the Charter Review Commission's materials, and I think it'd be a good idea to kind of branch out from that and see what other city advisory committees might have some good things that we could use. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Debbie. Appreciate that. The next person I would like to call on is Jasmine.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here. I'd like to echo a lot of what Debbie said. My name is Jasmine. I am a volunteer reporter at KBOO Community Radio and have been attending city meetings around police accountability for about 4 or 5 years now. And I will say that one thing that I would really encourage you all to think about is the difference as a member of the community in attending these meetings pre and post COVID. In a lot of ways, it's great to have the accessibility of being able to go to 5 meetings in a night because they're all on Zoom. But the other side of that is that we as the community, for us, it's a very isolating experience to be in these spaces, not see each other, only see your faces, not really see each other's names, not see what the other people are saying. And a lot of times what that can do is it can also create this feeling that y'all are trying to protect yourself from the public instead of really being welcoming of the public. And that is not something that really fosters trust in the process and trust in the body. So I would encourage you to think about ways that this can really feel like a welcoming and open space to the public, and where we can feel like we're, you know, full parts of the conversation. So thank you all for your time. I know you're thinking about this stuff deeply. Appreciate the opportunity to speak.
Thank you so much, Jasmine. Definitely appreciate that perspective. I would like to, I believe, is there another person, Amber?
I think it was Barbara Ross who had her hand up.
Barbara Ross, I'm sorry. Yes. Barbara.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I appreciate the conversation about public comment, and I think that it's really important that you preserve the time, that you protect the time that you have for public comment. And if you're going to have 10 minutes or 15 minutes, don't push that out and say, well, we're going to have the meeting go longer, and so we're going to push public comment after our time of our meeting close. And I also think that sometimes when there are fewer people talking, there's a better opportunity for the moderator to allow clarifying questions, because sometimes in the public, we don't always make our points as clearly. And if there's time, I think that the opportunity to do clarifying questions. And I also like your separating the Q&A from the public comment section, having a clear way for people who just have questions to ask that question and expect an answer. I think that's a really positive approach. And I do appreciate the fact that the public can bring up things that you in your conversations may not have thought about. And it's really good to have those things brought up. So I appreciate the opportunity to comment. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Dan.
So some of this, and this is why one of the reasons I value public comment. Some of these comments reminded me of something else I wanted to talk about, just in terms of our community engagement, just through the way the meetings are being held now. We are, as somebody mentioned, we're using this webinar format where we can't see who's in the audience. I try to always say how many people are here at one time. There were originally 11 tonight. We're down to 9. I'd like to do something at least to acknowledge the audience in a formal way, but if we can also get to the other format, the regular Zoom format, and just have somebody whose job it is to make sure that people aren't interrupting. I agree. I'd like to see who's here, and other groups do that all the time. They just tell people who aren't part of the committee to turn their cameras off. I think that would be good. And the kind of related to that,
Dan,
yes?
we're a minute over.
I understand. The chat function on other Zoom calls, there's 3 dots where you can download it, and hasn't been available yet on these meetings, and I'm hoping it'll be available at our full meeting next week.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. Oh my goodness, this has been a fantastic meeting. Lots of great work today. Thank you so much for your contributions. Also, thank you to our interpreters for being here and for also being at the Police Accountability Commission and its subcommittees. And finally, thank you all of the members of the public for being here today. It's been a really wonderful meeting. Please sign up for email updates at the URL on the screen. So have a great evening. Much appreciated. Take care.